Hello, my name is Keith Parker, and I would like to share some thoughts and ideas about my presentation on the ADDIE model and its use for instructional design. It is an important role of an educator to plan instruction in a way that will maximize the benefit of the teaching and learning process for most students. And certainly the diversity of the students that we teach, certainly being a good thing, does present challenges though for educators to find instructional methods and design that can reach most students. And that can happen and does happen, but it does require a planning process. And I think that's where the ADDIE model works best. This is a photograph of one of my classes, and this is this past year at our annual White House Christmas party. And I'm a social studies teacher, and each year, kind of as a cumulative project, students choose one historical figure in American history. They write a 5-page research essay on that person, make a presentation, and then they can come to our White House Christmas party if they will come dressed in character as that person. And if you look at the photograph, you can see a fairly rambunctious group, from John Lennon flashing the peace sign there with aviators to Amelia Earhart to Abraham Lincoln in the back. John F. Kennedy made an appearance. So quite an interesting group there. And I'm going to use some photographs from that particular class in the presentation to kind of model how I've used the ADDIE instructional design model myself. So let's go ahead and get started, and let me just share a couple of concepts here with ADDIE. But simply it stands for Analysis, Design, Develop, Implement, and Evaluate. And that process considers educators to think about who are the learners that are going to be participating in the learning process. Excuse me. What new behaviors might be required to implement learning? So in my particular case with AP US History, students have to learn how to learn, essentially. And what I mean by this is the enormous use of primary source documents that are included in the assessments in AP US History require students to use methods and strategies to break down documents. And so there is some initial training that students have to go through in terms of how to use some of our structures to break down documents. What are the processes and procedures that are in place when you read a new primary source document? So before learning can take place, behaviors and skills sometimes have to be taught. So what are they? What are delivery options that you're going to use as the teacher in the learning process? How will you deliver content? How will you engage students in the learning process? And then finally, how will you check to see if students are gaining mastery and proficiency? What will be the assessment processes that will take place? So essentially thinking about who the learners are going to be. The analysis phase of who is in your demographic population, what are curriculum standards, what do we need to think about up front. Then let's design instruction that will accommodate the majority of our diverse learning population. So using the steps and the information gathered from the analysis and design phase, how are we then going to put in place performance tasks, lesson strategies, engagement processes, pedagogical skills? What are we going to use to develop lessons? The implementation phase is the teaching phase of the lesson, and then finally the evaluation phase is the assessment, but also the personal reflection phase from the educator, where you step back and say, this worked very well, but this didn't. So how can we then go back to the drawing board and figure out ways to enhance what we're doing? So this is the ADDIE model in just a nutshell here: analysis, design, develop, implement, and evaluate. Here's some photographs from a lesson that I recently taught and used the ADDIE model as a design model to plan the lesson. But essentially this lesson was on late 19th, early 20th century American imperialism. And if you'll notice in the bottom right hand photograph there, that is a map that students designed, placing primary sources on the map, labeling the map, but the map highlights the increased American presence around the world after the 1898 war with Spain, where we claimed our first overseas territories. So students worked in groups to do this. Then if you look at the upper photograph on the right-hand corner there, that is a presentation phase of the lesson where students presented out their maps and primary sources they found. We worked with 5 groups with about 5 students per group in this lesson. It was over a 3-day period, a 3-day lesson, and each of the 5 groups focused on a region. So for example, in this particular photograph, group 1 is presenting the positive and negative implications of American imperialism in Latin America, particularly with the building of the Panama Canal, our involvement in Mexico in 1914 with the overthrow of the Mexican dictator there. So they're sharing out what they learned, and then classmates are listening, and then we'll synthesize that information on a graphic organizer once that group's presentation is over. The photograph on the left-hand corner is in day 3 of the lesson, and I used a website called blockposters.com, and it will take any image and it will enlarge that image over multiple 8.5 by 11 pages. You can then cut those out, and then you have a poster size image of that small image. So here are some cartoons that students are viewing in the hallway. This particular cartoon in this image deals with American imperialism in Asia, most notably in China, where we worked very diligently to be able to trade with China in the early 1900s with a policy we called the open door policy. Of course, the irony of the cartoon is the door is open, but Uncle Sam holds the key through American diplomacy, and he's now choosing who can go in and who can't. So maybe the open door policy is not really that open. So this lesson was constructed very diligently on my part, but took a lot of planning to be able to execute this. And I think that is really where the ADDIE model comes into play beneficially. It is very beneficial to plan with those parameters in mind, thinking about who your students are, thinking about the relation to curriculum standards, thinking about the particular design and how the lesson will be developed and implemented. Those are important, I think, aspects. If you're going to design engaging lessons, you really have to put in a lot of work on the front end in order to be able to make the lesson a success. So there's the ADDIE model, and then kind of a personal story here of how I've been using that. Let me now transition to the ADDIE model's use in my exemplar of engaging students to use photo stream and cloud streaming for group projects. So this is a focus of what my paper was on for this assignment, and simply what I want students to do is to use their iPads in class to stream their work through Apple's iCloud photo stream, so that each group member can have the updates and be able to access the information and the photos for their group project on multiple devices. So there are several benefits to using PhotoStream. It's a free service that's included with any Apple product, and it allows multiple people to sync photos and documents to one place. So I think the benefit here in group projects like the imperialism project that my students are working on is that multiple students can participate and add to the assignment at home, on their lunch break, whenever, and then students can access that in one place. It's synced across multiple devices. If students don't have an iPad at home, then they can access the PhotoStream through a web browser. So I think those are some obvious benefits to using PhotoStream. PhotoStream is a very easy to use program, so you select a series of photos or documents that you want to share. You create a new stream, and then you decide who you want to add to that stream. Anyone that is added to the stream can add photos to the stream. So in the case of, in my example of having groups of 5, you could have 5 students adding photos at the same time. Then each of the 5 group members sees everything on their device. An additional benefit to this is Apple doesn't cap the amount of photos you can have or the amount of streams, so it's essentially unlimited. And the other benefit is it's very easy to use, and it can be used on multiple platforms, including accessing the streams through a PC and a web browser, and then also on multiple devices, an iPad, an iOS device, any iOS device, and then a Mac. So in this particular example, my learning objectives would be to have students understand what the benefits and potentially challenges to using photo streams would be, to create a photo stream, and then find ways to correlate their photo stream to their projects. So how could photo streams be used to enhance collaboration on their projects? What I would have students do in this particular example is model the benefits of photo stream to them, and then have them create a photo stream, share that stream, add photos, and then evaluate the usefulness of photo streams. So students would view a PowerPoint presentation, and then they would analyze the benefits of using photo stream. They would get with their groups, and they would create a photo stream, add group members, and then each group member would upload photos to the stream. Finally, in this process, I'd have students take an assessment to verify that they understand the procedures in place to create a stream. So if they wanted to do one at home, they'd be able and competent to do that. And then to complete A+ Delta, really showing the advantages and disadvantages of using PhotoStream compared to other programs like Flickr or Evernote, for example. And of course, the actual photo stream would be a student exemplar of this process. So at the end of the activity, students would display their photo streams on our projector. They would answer the 5 review questions that I have on the next slide of this presentation, and then complete an evaluation on a Google Doc and provide feedback on the usefulness of photo streams. So, just essentially some review questions for students to explain the procedures for creating a new photo stream, here to just check mastery to see if students can do it. Number 2, how effective is photo stream in enhancing group collaboration? I think the obvious answers here would range from one collective cloud-based source for group sources, so that it's compiled, it's safe, it's accessible at all times to all group members. That's an obvious benefit. 3, what are some challenges associated with photo streams? Of course, this could go into play when students talk about sort of the limited nature of photo streams compared to the all-inclusive feature-based program Evernote, and a lot of the sources it uses, which I've used that in my class as well. So I would suspect some students could say, I would prefer Evernote over photo streams, and that's certainly okay. When considering collaborating photo sharing apps, again here this is asking students to think about the advantages and disadvantages to photo streams compared to Evernote. And how can photo streams be used to enhance your World War II project? So this would be an assessment to evaluate that last stage in ADDIE, which has the evaluation component to see where students are, to see the effectiveness of the lesson, and check for mastery of understanding. I hope you've enjoyed my presentation, and certainly I think there are some benefits to using instructional design to plan lessons, and certainly I think ADDIE is a great model to do that. Thank you.